CPM Math 3, Problem 2-61. We're being reintroduced to the concept of I as the imaginary number. And one thing it's very important to remember is that I is actually equal to the square root of -1. And in our mind, we think the square root of -1 can't exist because there is no number times itself that equals -1. So we just use this letter I as kind of a placeholder for it in order to be able to move forward into problems. So with the square root of 25, we're actually going to break this little fella down into the square root of -1 times the square root of 25. And when we do that, we just said square root of -1 is I. All right, the imaginary I, and the square root of 25 is 5. So then we can put those back together, and the answer is 5I. Now, hopefully that's just a really good review for you, and it makes sense, okay? So the square root of 32, I'm going to actually break it out into the square root of -1 times the square root of 32, but the square root of 32 has a perfect square floating around in it. That's kind of the focus here, is we want to find the perfect square, and it happens to be 16 times 2. So the square root of -1 times the square root of 16 times the square root of 2 all equals the square root of -2. Square root of -1 is I, square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 2 can't be broken down any further, so we have to leave it as square root of 2. So we end up with, in proper order, 4I, here's the 4, there's the I, times square root of 2, or radical 2. Okay, all right, so now we're being asked to do something different, a little bit of operations, multiplying with the imaginary number I. And we just are going to use the distributive property. So 3 times 5 is 15, because this is multiplication. 3 times -3i is -9i. And then here, 2i times 5 is plus 10i, and 2i times -3i is -6i squared. Now we do have to, quote, combine like terms, so we end up with 15, let's see, minus 9i plus 10i, that's plus 1i, and then minus 6i squared. Now, it's tempting to say, okay, we're done. However, we have to remember that if I is the square root of -1, okay, get this, I squared then has to be -1. All right, so this little guy right here, let's change colors so we can see it. This guy, like right here, is -1. So this is -6 times -1. Not sure if you've seen that before. Plus 1i, we're rewriting it. So this becomes 15 plus I minus -6 or plus 6. And we can actually combine like terms. 15 plus 6 is 21 plus I. Whew, that was fun. Okay, let's do this over here. Oh, wait a minute though. This is a plus. It isn't a multiplication, so we're not going to jump on in and do all the distributive property. We just need to rewrite it without the parentheses and then combine like terms. So 3 plus 2i plus 5 plus a negative is minus 3i. Now we can just combine like terms. 3 plus 5 is 8. 2i minus 3i is minus 1i, or just minus I. Bam, done.